capacity building, access to international climate finance, joint business opportunities. In the past couple of years, the IDFC had been supporting members in mainstream common principles on mitigation and adaptation, developing a framework for the operationalization of the Paris Agreement alignment, promoting a mentoring program between institutions, delivering climate toolbox.
Good, hello everyone. Good afternoon, maybe I can say good evening. Very happy to be here. For those I don't know, my name is Priscila Negreiros and I lead the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance. So let's keep the energy because it's 6:30. I imagine that some of you, not all, are a bit tired, but we're talking about a very relevant topic. So we're talking about national development banks and cities and how we can reinforce this strategic partnership. So as we're here making a bit of a reflection, we are at COP at the Cities Day, right? Like I think a lot of you probably already talk a lot about cities, and this specific COP has brought a lot of attention to cities. We had a local climate summit for the first time. We had more than 220, maybe I don't have the right number, but that less number I heard, more than 220 mayors that came to COP this time. This morning we had a ministerial about cities, and that only shows how cities are finally coming to the agenda when we are talking about climate, and more than that, how cities are getting more and more ambitious towards climate change. And that's exactly what we need, because a lot of the change and most of the change will happen at the local level. But we're still facing some hurdles on the other side, and I think I'm gonna steal a phrase from Josué Tanaka that said that actually we need to still improve a bit of our gearbox in terms of financing. Like all the money that we need to be flowing towards climate action to cities is not necessarily getting there, and I think a lot of you work and know about it. So I think the big question is, how can we make it happen? And today we want to discuss the role of a very important actor, which are national development banks, and how they can intermediate different private finance, international public funding, and then they are closer to the cities. And we want to hear from them and talk about it. So I'm not going to speak a lot more in this intro because we have amazing opening remarks from a very good friend, supporter, and leader on this front when we are talking about cities, Vera Hondenhoff, who is Deputy Director General for International Climate Action at the Germany Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, and Vera will do our opening remarks. Thank you.
Thanks, Priscilla, for this very kind introduction. And hello, everyone, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, people online and here in the room. Yes, it's the Cities Day, and cities, like countries and like all of us, if we want to scale the finances, we need this scale. It's late. It needs scale the climate action. We need the appropriate and right finances for that. So. This is especially true for the urban space. And so IFC has estimated that investment needs of $2.5 trillion annually would be needed to actually close the urban finance gap. And CCFLA indeed has estimated that investments made in 2017 and 18 were only about 348 billion. So this is actually a fraction of what is needed. It's very blatantly obvious. So what can we do? All of us, so we decided to focus on urban climate finance as one specific sector. And we started this, we have a long history, but one of the bigger things we did was at the UN Secretary General Summit in 2019. We, together with many of the initiatives and people here in the room, also kickstarted the initiative Leadership on Urban Climate Investments called LUCI, which is just a framework for more initiatives to leverage climate finance for cities. It's basically several initiatives along the urban climate finance value chain to raise the money and interlink and work hand in hand. And this is also what the CCFLA does, who is sort of the backbone of LUCI. So there are more than 20 initiatives in the so-called LUCI, and we have supplied up to 120 million to them as the German government, and this includes the GAP fund, where, well, the funding, actually the German government, 120 was from us, our ministry, and to the GAP fund we provided 50 million, and the government, together with Luxembourg, we have provided an overall of 104 million. So this was actually over the main target goal. And we have, with this finance, we have currently, through LUCI, capacitated 884 cities. The goal is 2,000, so we still have somewhere to go, but we still have some time. And we have linked 277 projects to finance. Here the goal is on 1,000. So you see in LUCI, but overall there's still a lot that needs to be done. And when we looked at LUCI, we already saw that there is an important role for the national development banks back in 2019, and that is becoming ever clearer that the national development banks have a key role to play, especially also in the global south. And why is that so? It's actually because 37% of public climate finance comes from national development banks. Or development finance institutions. They are key players really if we want to enable investments also in the urban climate space. Just a bit of a landscape. There are 250 NDBs which exist globally. NDBs hold assets of $5 trillion US, so that's 5 times as much as the MDBs. And they have a comparative advantage to the MDBs, amongst others, because they have a knowledge of the environment, of the local environment and the market, and they have the ability to lend in local currency. So, but they also face barriers. They have financial constraints, there are knowledge constraints, policy, legal, and regulatory barriers, and this is what we want to tackle with a new project that we are proposing, which is called NUCA. You see, we have an affinity to these types of names, but this is a new project that we're kicking off with 20 million euros of funding, and we intend to kick this off next year. It's a strategic partnership with the AFD, the IDFC, 5 national development banks, and the city network C40. The countries we want to work in are Brazil, Colombia, South Africa, Indonesia, and Mozambique. And the CCFLA is our knowledge partner. So we think we've got a really, really great partnership going there. The core mission of NUCA is to strengthen institutional capacities of NDBs, catalyze financing from public and private sources for urban climate projects, and provide project preparation funding to select projects. So we're going to embed 5 experts to the partner NDBs and undertake systematic capacity building measures, also through project preparation funding, enabling partner NDBs to bring concrete and climate smart projects into the world, off the ground, and into bankability and implementation, often picking up projects that were supported through the GAP fund also, so along the whole investment value chain that we created through LUCI. So we are really, really happy about this project. And we are really looking forward to its results and how much it can leverage, and looking forward to all the people and cities it can make happy and make them better, more resilient spaces to live in. So with that, thank you very much, and I look forward to discussion.
I might take this on. Thank you so much, Vera, for giving this great overview about the role of the NDBs and all of the programs that Germany is supporting and making such a difference for the cities and the cities' climate finance space. So we're going to kick off the debate, and we're going to do it by the beginning. So understanding the role of cities and how actually cities are critical to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. And for that, I want to call Andrea Fernandes, Managing Director of Climate Finance Knowledge and Partnership from C40 Cities. Welcome. Please sit. I think you can sit here. We're going to be great. Yep. We're going to have Laura Piovesan, Deputy Director General of Projects, Director from EIB, European Investment Bank. We also have Mayor Cilias Bring, Executive Mayor of Chuan. Thank you. I think you can say that. And then we're going to have online, hopefully he's there with us, Samuel Lefebvre. Oh, yes, he's here. Samuel, great to see you. Senior Project Officer of the Cities Department of AFD. So it's late, and we want to have an open conversation that we can learn something new. And I'm going to start, so please feel free also to raise hands, ask questions, and let's dive into it. So Andrea, let's start with the challenges, and we always like to start on that front because we need to understand what cities are facing to access this finance, and you have been working for years within C40 Cities and discussing this issue, so I would love to ask you this. Where are the biggest challenges, actually?
Thanks so much, Priscilla, and thanks everyone and those online. So I think with the challenges, I think it's important to keep in mind the governance context of cities. So you have cities with very different situations. We've got cities that can issue debt, take on bonds, and we've got cities like our co-chair of C40 Cities, Mayor Aki Sawyer, who is completely constrained. She cannot take on any private or public finance. She cannot even issue building permits. I mean, she's very, very, very constrained and has to turn to incredibly innovative models to get stuff done and really receive grants, because that's what she can do. So I think the governance context does vary between city to city, but generally speaking, the type of challenges cities face are, first, these fiscal constraints, these policy constraints that might limit what a city can do, how much debt it can, if it can take on debt, how much debt, what permission does it need to get in order to take on that debt, and then constraints that may impair that city's ability to have strong financial health as well. Second, there's an issue around capacity, and here it's understanding, what makes a bankable project, what would make this project attractive to financial institutions. We've got, the second panel is going to be with those institutions, and I think the cities sometimes don't understand, what ticket size, how does it need to be developed, which banks offer the sovereign versus the sub-sovereign lending, and where to turn to for support. What are those options available? And third is I think sometimes the most difficult one, which is the issue of the political alignment. A lot of our cities do depend on national government to either do the sovereign lending, but even if a city does want to, cities who do have ability to take on their own debt sometimes still need to get to the national government to get the okay. And then you've got the conflicts between, capital city mayor, maybe they're from a different political party, maybe they don't get that support. We hear that all the time from our cities. We talked to Green Climate Fund, they wanted to support us, but then our national government would not submit the application. Or we talked to this bank, but our national government won't support it. So this issue of political alignment is really difficult and a hard one for cities to overcome. So we'd really like to see some of this become less about the politics and more about the projects.
Great, Andrea, thank you so much. So I hear regulatory issues, capacity, information, political alignment. So cities actually need partnership. They need organizations and institutions that are helping them to overcome. And then, Samuel, I'll go to you, and we definitely can see you are in Paris based on the from the view behind you. And we want to know a bit more of the role the AFD plays in accelerating climate action in cities, and how, can you solve some of these issues that Andrea raised?
Thanks, Priscilla, and thanks for the opportunity to speak on behalf of AFD. It's not snowing here, don't worry. So apologies for not being in person in Dubai with you. So to answer straight to your question, I need to remind that AFD is an interesting animal. We are an entity that is at the same time a DFI, a development finance institution, and so we work as a financier of the city strategies of urban investments, but we are also a technical agency. So we are providing advices and supporting the cities also in the preparation of these strategies and formulation of pipeline of investment. And I'd like to underline why cities are so high in our agenda. Why do we finance them? I think the main reason is definitely that because national government cannot achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement without the contribution of the cities. It's a very important fact. As it was said by the Secretary General of the UN very recently, he said, cities are where the climate battle will largely be won or lost. And we really acknowledge that. I think the mayors, they have the most difficult jobs. They have to reconcile development with climate issues. And it's also the mandate of the AFD to do so. So we really think that there's a beauty in the place-based policies. Place-based policies, it's actually working through cities. When we work through cities, we are tackling at the same time mitigation and adaptation issues through them. So it's a very key partner to us.
Thank you so much, Samuel. And I think you touch on a point that I'm going to follow up with you, Laura, on the technical side. So on the preparation of projects, and EIB have been actually investing a lot into municipalities in Europe and also outside Europe. And I wanted to ask particularly generally on how EIB has been working on these problems and the challenges the cities are facing, and also asking a bit about the GAP Fund. If you could explain to people here that don't know the GAP Fund, how this project is key into helping cities achieve their climate ambitions.
Thank you, Priscilla. And indeed, I think we have heard a lot today about the centrality of cities in the green transition, but also in addressing climate risk and adaptation measures, and also the significant needs, but also the willingness and the interest of financial institutions to provide finance to this type of projects. Nevertheless, indeed, there is projects are stuck. There is a lack of implementation of this project. They're not proceeding at the speed that everyone would like to, and at the scale that we would all like to. So, what is the issue? We discussed about the need to provide technical assistance and to provide that technical expertise and advice to develop these projects, but we do see also a need even earlier. So the need to engage earlier with the cities and different players to at the level of the pre-feasibility studies. So to really help the cities design the strategies that will allow to bring the projects up to speed and make sure that these are embedded in the national strategy. So this gap at these early stages is exactly why the City Gap Fund, City Climate Finance Gap Fund was established by EIB and World Bank and GIZ with the support of the German government and the Luxembourg government. So it is a very much needed, it's filling a very much needed gap, and this is demonstrated also by the success of this fund so far in terms of receiving and screening more than 400 expression of interest, so big number of interest, and we have so far supported some 58 cities in 27 different countries. So we do see a very important need, and we do see an important role for the City Gap Fund, and this is also the reason why the City Gap Fund is being, has been increased recently.
Thank you. That's very important. And I think we're always talking about bankable projects. And now I heard that I cannot say bankable projects anymore, that we shouldn't use this expression. Financial projects. So we're finding the best one to substitute. But so it's very, very important that actually the cities have support. But either way, we are still facing challenges. And I think we, Mayor, very happy to have you with us, because we need to actually hear the voices of who is actually implementing, if we're always talking about implementation. So love to hear like the challenge you're facing on the ground and your experience on having access to climate finance specifically.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the invitation to participate in this panel. The city of Tshwane, where I'm the mayor, includes the capital city of South Africa, about 3.7 million people, so a city solidly in the global south, to use the old terminology, the developing world. In essence, South Africa and perhaps many other many other countries in our context is in the midst of several transitions. We're transitioning from a one-party dominant democracy to one where most of the cities will be run by coalition governments. So you mentioned the misalignment sometimes between national and subnational policy. So that's one transition. The other is that South Africa has a national energy monopoly, which is financially and institutionally coming apart. Various efforts are being made to keep it afloat, but our entire system of electricity distribution was based on that monopoly, so cheap coal-fired electricity, and that's what our economy as South Africa was industrialized on. That's the basis for our industrialization as a country. And municipalities made at least a significant part of our revenue through the distribution of electricity. Now we have rolling blackouts. The availability factor from that national energy monopoly is no longer there. And the burden of coming up with alternatives falls squarely on cities, where our industries are, where the drivers of our economy. So cities that have traditionally never been players in electricity generation are now having to become that. And that's an important part. So it's challenging the collapse of this national energy monopoly, is challenging our own funding model. So the essence of what I want to say is that we need rebuilding. And at this crucial juncture, the question is going to be, what opportunities for rebuilding green and rebuilding in a sustainable way to deliver services in a carbon neutral, or at least a lower carbon manner? Because we can rebuild in the other way, that sends us in the other direction. And often that is the easiest course. That's the most bankable course sometimes. And the question from a regional and global perspective is, what are the incentives and the institutional mechanisms that we're going to create to encourage cities with responsible leaders who want to go sustainable and carbon neutral to take that avenue. And many of the initiatives mentioned here I think will contribute to that.
Thank you so much. That's very, very interesting. We cannot talk about urban climate finance without talking about how revenue is actually going to be created, and how can you structure your own local economy, and this is key. So I'm going to put Andrea on the spot and ask how C40 is supporting cities to access to finance based on everything that we heard. Sorry.
So as you've heard from the mayor, this is the top issue for all of our mayors. I think 25 mayors, something like that, to here to COP, and a number were invited to very specific brunch where they all had, were allowed to just share, what support they needed, what's been really helpful from C40, and finance came up all over the place. This is just the number one issue. So we try to help however we can, and that's through organizing peer-to-peer exchanges. The mayor will know he met another mayor today on this issue of revenues and how to strengthen them. But try to make those connections between cities, between mayors, but also between the technical teams so they can learn from others. We hold finance academies where we show cities what are different business models you can use, what are different funding sources to pay for your projects, what are different finance mechanisms, what are the options. can we connect them to either experts or technical assistance facilities like the GAP Fund to support them. We also do investor roundtables so we can hear from the banks, this is what we're looking for, this is how you need to develop a project that will get picked up by this institution. We do research in some of the innovative areas in this space, and for example, around we've done research in the past around green banks and how can cities set these up, around EV charging. So trying to capture the learning and share it, and try to bring cities to make these important connections again to the financial institutions, to the funds out there that can support them in project preparation. We also have our own project preparation facility called C40 Cities Finance Facility, CFF. And then finally, I think the advocacy side is incredibly important. So we are here at COP saying that cities need support, they need resources. This has been one of the key messages from our co-chair and all of our mayors, I think, in many of the events that we've been here attending this week. And that includes everything from the report we just released with CCFLA and the Global Covenant of Mayors, looking at how multilateral development banks need to support cities, and what is the urban angle to MDB reform. How can we bring urban as a strategic component of MDB reform? We are part of the Urban SDG Finance Commission, which is trying to scale up finance solutions and look at what these might be, including things like global guarantee mechanisms. So we're here advocating on behalf of cities and trying to help them make those connections.
Thank you. Very, very interesting. Samuel, I'm going to go back to you, back to snowy Paris. And you mentioned something that actually AFD is an animal, right? Like a big one that do different things. I want you to tell us a little bit more about the different instruments and mechanisms that you have available, and how can you better serve cities, particularly in developing countries, and like solutions that AFD has.
Sure, thank you. So as we can see with the mayor of Tshwane here, there is willingness, there is ambition of many cities to move forward with the transition, but as underlined by Andrea, they face the issue of availability of funding, and also I need to say, I think the shortage of expertise to design and deliver the local green project investment, and specifically in South Africa, I know there's this issue of the just energy transition, which is quite strong. So money is one thing, but as a city, you also need, I would say, a pipeline of catalytic projects to be both well formulated and then implemented, and it requires expertise. So I think this is where innovative financing should come. This is where a stronger involvement, I think, of both international, like us, but also national public development banks, it's highly needed. We have many instruments, but first and foremost, what I'd like to underline is that we need, as banks, to have a continuous policy dialogue with the cities we work with as partners. So really, it's technical dialogue, sector dialogue, but public policy dialogue with the cities we work with. We are not only financiers, we are discussing, with cities, and it's very important to work both with capital and intermediary cities. In AFD, I will not name all the different instruments that we have, but just as categories of instruments, we are one of the few bilateral banks that can finance cities directly at our own risks. And it was mentioned today, we can lend in local currencies, which is a very, very important aspect. So we have numerous cases in many countries, and in South Africa, my dear South Africa, Durban and Cape Town, not yet Tshwane, but it can come. We also have set up, it's an important point I want to underline, it's very important to have guarantee schemes available, and we have guarantee schemes available to public banks and private banks. So the banks that wish to finance cities in a country for a specific investment project with a climate ambition, we have a guarantee scheme. And obviously, you quote the GAP fund. There's this big project preparation fund. We also have our own tools and participate in bigger tools for project preparation. Project preparation is very important. It's a kind of, working on the formulation of project, you contribute to the de-risking of this project. And for a bank, it's important. You unlock the funding, and not only the funding of public financier, but if you have a proper setup, you can also attract private funding. And last but not least, I think we have programs that in some countries where it's still very centralized, to try to strengthen the fiscal and financial autonomy of cities. That's what I would call the true decentralization. So that the cities, they can achieve their mandate because they can mobilize their own fiscal and non-fiscal revenues. I would stop here. I'm too talkative, so sorry.
Samuel, basically, you are working all the fronts. But a lot of the points you mentioned, I'm sure we're going to touch base on the next session about direct funding, local currency, and I'm sure a lot of the national development banks that are joining us will discuss it and their key role on that front. But I think we still need to go back a couple of miles back to understand a lot of the cities have issues on starting the projects. And I think, Laura, that's where the GAP Fund plays a key role, as you're mentioning to us. And now that the GAP Fund is on the world for a couple of years, I guess. So, like, what are the lessons you have been learning working with so many different cities in so many different areas of the world? And, like, how can we start better, let's say?
Thank you very much. No, indeed, what has been said so far this evening really, resonates with us. We do see all these challenges, in a way, reflected here also in our experience in the GAP Fund. Now, I mentioned that the GAP Fund operates in this pre-feasibility area, and the first lesson I think we learn is the importance of, yes, we are bridging a gap, but we need to keep being bridges, no? So we need to keep building these connections that you were mentioning with the actors, with the financial institutions, with the donors, and the different actors that are playing in this area. So first of all, building this connection at a very early stage, because this allows to at a very early stage identify what are the requirements, for example, to be financed. No? The second lesson is it is very important to be present on the ground and build this long-lasting relationship with the cities. And again, here we take advantage of EIB, World Bank, and GIZ experience with the cities, and we maintain this dialogue in order to be able to together identify, propose these projects that can be then advised by the GAP Fund. So continuing to build a bit of a pipeline, we mentioned several times. Now, the third lesson is that we do come across projects of very small sizes, and as a bank, it's always difficult to handle those. Now, we have some lower limits. So we do need in this ecosystem actors that play as aggregators on one hand, but also as a conduit of these financial flows, because we heard that different cities have different capacities to take on board the loan. Some can, some cannot, some can only partly. So it is very important to find financial intermediaries that can also have and incorporate financial intermediaries that can have this role. And because of these three lessons, I think it's very important what was mentioned also by Vera in her introduction, the role of national development banks, because we see national development banks as being critical in helping to bridge all these three aspects that I mentioned. They are locally rooted, so they know they know the risk, they know the market actors, and they really have a chance to aggregate all these smaller projects I was mentioning. So an important role with the National Promotional Bank, and this is also why the City Gap Fund will in 2024 strengthen this capacity building with National Promotional Bank through training programs, which are of course complementary with FENUCA. So I think both together we have quite a lot of firepower to strengthen this important, let's say, missing link.
No, thank you so much. Linking, so, and we are already starting to talk about national development banks, but we're gonna go deeper there in the next session. But like linking to what you just said about the role of these public banks, right? Like national and potentially regional. And I would like to ask you, Mayor Cyril, like, what do you think should improve? Like what do you need to change on while working with these intermediaries, like which is the focus, so we can streamline more climate finance towards the city? And like, if you could tell us a bit about your experience. Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm committed not to be the guy that comes to complain about things, because everybody just shuts off when people just come and complain. Give me money, give me money. So let me just start by acknowledging that in our context, whether it be the city or the region, there are institutional things that cities must do in order to show that we're serious. So for instance, our participation in the climate budget initiative with C40. So align your priorities, overlay them, and frame them in terms of sustainability. That's one thing. Second thing, clamp down on corruption, mismanagement, inefficiencies. Third thing, secure your income streams as much as you possibly can, because we can try and negotiate and say we can't use the ordinary measures of creditworthiness for green projects and all that stuff, but you do need a measure of credibility, and that we're committed to, building the capable state. But then on the other hand, in our context in particular, we need, as Samuel has said, far greater autonomy. Just to give you one small example, national government recently put out a white paper on EVs, and cities weren't even consulted about it. But where is the EV infrastructure, the recharging, where is that going to come from? In your white paper. So that sort of engagement is critical, especially where we are currently as a country, and the role played by cities. But then further to that, and there's tremendous potential. So for instance, with DBSA in South Africa, the Development Bank of Southern Africa, there is tremendous potential using them as an intermediary, already a strong, credible institution. And you know, if funding through them can be improved, local currency denominated loans and all that stuff. And we must even look at other ways of managing potential risks. So for instance, one project that we're partnering with the DBSA is they are the implementing agent on an upgrade of a wastewater treatment plant called Rooiwal in our city, where having them implement the project is basically a way of mitigating certain risks which arise in our own supply chain management system. So all of these things we have to consider, but the autonomy of cities and the centrality of the role that cities play, I think is crucially important in aspects of policy and you know, doing business institution to institution.
Thank you so much. I think we won't have time for questions, but potentially we could have like an open debate at the end of the full session. But although my notes don't make absolutely no sense, I will try to, very busy, a lot of information, I'll try to summarize. So I think we definitely see a lot of ambition from the city. We see here from Mayor Chiswan, but from everything that is going on at COP, Cities need to be engaged throughout the process. I'll lean on what you just said, throughout a national process, international process. That's what we are trying to do here at COP, and be engaged throughout the way, because they actually need to be consulted and participated through the system. We need changes, and cities are facing political hurdles, fiscal revenue, and need to rebuild the system to be able to deal with climate change. We need a lot of early stage support, so I hear that too. And we need to have very different offers. I think Samuel brought up that on guarantees, working with cities and local currency, so actually responding to their needs. And for that, the role of National Development Bank is key. And that's the best segue for me to thank you, all of our first panel participants, for their insights, and actually call Josué Tanaka, who is the C40 Senior Advisor, and gonna walk us through the second part of the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. So, given the hour, it is time to go to a hyper-stimulating topic, and in a hyper-stimulating way. So I'm not going to dance or do anything like this, because that's probably shocking, but I think, perhaps just a few words to connect, the two sessions we had. I think Vera, in her introduction, mentioned some numbers, which I remember. I think it was in Heidelberg that these numbers, came, right? The 2000 and the 1000. And I believe that, one of the numbers you mentioned was 244, was it, out of the 1,000? Something like that. Oh, it was about that. But let's say about 1/4, right? And I think that that's the challenge, to the extent is, how to move, the number of projects that are actually financed, right? So I think Laura also very helpfully in her comments made, the connection to this next part, which is really then, to cover the role of the national development banks, and also to give you a notion of what was mentioned. I will leave the next speaker to explain to you what NUCA actually means, right? But I think if I could first call Mustafa Kleischer to come here from AFD, and he has been a very hard-working man that I have seen over the, I guess it's a few years by now, developing, right, this program. So we want to hear everything about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Josué, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Mustafa Klesh from the facility for the Climate and Biodiversity Facility of IDFC. Just maybe a few words about the Climate Facility. Is the operational arm of IDFC, helping members to through knowledge sharing, capacity building, and joint opportunities like the one we are talking about today. To improve their capacity to address the issues of Paris Agreement and the Biodiversity Convention. Just maybe to say, so the NUCA program, the NUCA means National Development Bank's Urban Climate Action Plan program, is part of the activities of the Climate Facility, is part of the opportunities. The idea is to have some kind of operational activities with the members, because the banks don't like theory, they like practice. So it's very nice to make training and so kind of activities, but I think that they learn more with concrete operations, and this is part of the work done by the Climate Facility, and it complements other activities that we are doing. So for this project, we work very hard with not only me on the Climate Facility, but also our colleagues from the banks, and also we thank also the DFIs that we had a lot of discussion with them, and also the other partners on the ICI urban programs like City Gap Fund and other, World Bank, EIB, and other colleagues. We have a lot of discussions to come up with this project. So it's very collective work. We also work a lot with C40 and the CCFLA. We had a lot of discussions to try to find, I mean, what could be this, how this project could be, this program could be useful. And it's really the first program of that kind that is looking the world of the urban issue, the urban sector, from the eyes of the NDBs. What are the constraints they are facing to do more? What are the constraints that they are facing to be more willing to finance urban projects? They are doing that, But the idea is to maybe cities and NDBs are very important actors for the transition. There is no transition if the urban transition doesn't work. I mean, the cities are concentrating a lot of challenges, of issues of the climate change, could be in mitigation or adaptation. So, I mean, to be successful in the transition means to be successful in the transition of the cities. This is something important. And the banks, the development banks on the other side, they are very important player also. So the idea is to close this gap between the NDBs and the banks, but to work very closely. So the idea was to see what are missing for the NDBs, to the PDBs, to do better and to make more projects coming through. And this is the objective of this project from the beginning. So we come up with the project with three main components. The one is on the capacity building, to provide big support to the members through, so for example, to have consultants embedded, experts embedded in the banks to help, because we need a capacity, and this is something we learn about a lot about the banks, that's the lack of human resources, the lack on knowledge. So we can provide this through providing experts that can work with them all along the project. The second thing is the other component is about to finance some projects, because we need to come from the theory to the practice, and also to see how we can to develop the capacity of the banks also to be an advisory partner for the cities. It is important also to have this technical capacity, as just mentioned Samuel. IFD, he mentioned that IFD is not only financier but also a technical agency, and I think it is important to have this capacity of providing the advisory. It is always I mean, it is still there, but the importance is to increase this capacity and to make it maybe more systematic. And the third component is about knowledge sharing. It is important. This program is dealing with 5 countries, 5 institutions in different countries, 4 emerging countries and 1 developing countries, which is Mozambique. So we have Brazil, Colombia, Indonesia, South Africa, and Mozambique. The idea is to have a 2-dimension program. One is global. So we have the idea is to exchange at the global level the different experience from the different countries, and to see if there is some experience that we can get from one part of the geography to another country. So this is an important asset. And of course, to have this local dimension, to work deeply with all the actors locally to ensure that we create an ecosystem which is favorably, I mean, pushing for the implementation of a good project. So this is where we are now, and we just wait for the approval to, we are waiting for the approval of the project to start the implementation. But I think that this is where we are, and so we defined the use of this 20 million euro with the different colleagues. We spent 2-3 days, I remember it's 2 days in June, to come up to finalize the concept of the project. And really, I thank all for the participation and for their the participation for this project, and for the collective work and hard work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mustafa. I think that gives a good notion of what NUCA is, and thank you for explaining to us what it means precisely. So I will now call our panelists, if possible. So if I could call Mr. Olympus Mantata to come, and then also Mr. Pradana Murthy, and then I believe that we may have a Brazilian presence on screen. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm here, Marta, from Brazil, from BNDES.
Tudo bom, Marta?
Tudo bem.
Boa noite de Dubai. Sorry, we're not going to do it in Portuguese, but don't worry. But at least being half Brazilian, I have to at least say, hello in Brazilian. Otherwise, she will feel that I forgot. So, excellent. So, because of the hour, right, because all of you have probably done already about 12.5 miles today, if not more, walking, we're going to be incredibly efficient, in this panel, because I'm going to ask you everything in one go, and then each of you has about 5 minutes, to cover the topic. So Marta, I don't know if you're going to present slides, but if you do, it would be great if you try, because here, we are many hours ahead, from Brazil. And so, the energy level, everybody still have their eyes open, but we need to be sure,
Yeah,
to go.
I'm gonna share my screen here.
Okay.
I have 3 slides to show just to guide
3.
my lines.
Okay, so yes, 3.
So it's going to be...
I'm optimistic then. That's great. Okay. All right, so I think let me ask you the long question, right? And then essentially each of you, in turn can take, a response to that. So it's a 2-pronged question, right? The first question is, what can you tell us about, what your bank is doing to support, urban climate? And I think it's important there to also make a bit that distinction, right? Because many banks do urban, right? Then fewer banks may do actually urban climate. So it would be interesting to hear from you how you see that particular intersection, because that's what NUCA is about. And that's also, I guess, we're at COP28, so that climate element is probably important to mention. So that's the first one, is really one of saying, what is the activity that you do in this area? And the second one, because we have to, I'm a former multilateral development bank too, so we need to talk about financed instruments also, right? Otherwise we remain a bit too, I would say, general. So it would be interesting to see which finance instruments, in your view, that you're using are essentially most effective, to respond, to financing requirements. So perhaps, Marta, since you're on screen, maybe we'll start with you also, because I'm also half French, so I tend to be a bit too structured. So I'm going for alphabetic order, and your name starts with B, so we'll start with you. So just about 4 or 5 minutes will be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Josue. I don't know if you're seeing my screen. Oh yeah, I think you can see my screen. Thank you for the invitation, and congratulations IDFC for organizing this panel on such an important subject. My computer just blocked. It's not passing the slides. Well,
do you want
I'm sorry.
somebody to take over, and then you can fight with the computer while
yeah, maybe.
colleague. Let's do that. Okay, so in my incredibly methodical way, my incredibly methodical way, then that's it? It has moved. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think I'm not the one passing the slides. I think the technical team from you is passing. Well, here's just a few numbers from BNDES. BNDES has a 200 billion portfolio on infrastructure and energy projects, 15 billion projects just in 2022, 2,000 projects since in infrastructure and energy, and 100 billion export finance since 1991, and 120 billion is the portfolio of BNDES on social, environmental, and climate projects. And we have just won one award in innovative financial instruments. So could you pass for the other slide? Okay, here are some instruments that the BNDES has for financing climate projects. We have the Climate Fund, linked loans. We have, I cannot, I'm sorry, I cannot see the slides very well. Let me just, I'm really sorry. I cannot escape from the big screen, so I cannot see the slides. Well, I'm going to improvise without the slides. Well, BNDES is the Brazilian National Development Bank. So we are the bank that finances the public sector in Brazil. The private banks, they have difficulty in accessing the public sector. So we are the ones that provide finance for the cities. And we have an urban development division, and this urban development division is the one responsible for the credit lines of BNDES for the cities, and they are now focusing on adaptation projects, climate adaptation projects. And we also have a division, which is very important, that now I can see the slides. Thank you very much. Could you pass the slide, please? So I'm already talking about how we are organized here in BNDES to finance the cities. Another one, please. Could you pass one more? Thank you. So we also have this project structuring division, which we have a pipeline of projects for more than 100 billion pipeline of projects that are being structured by BNDES. And we have a close relationship with the cities, with the mayors, helping them to structure these projects. And what we have to do now is to insert the climate lens in this agenda, especially in the structuring project division. They have a capacity building gap that we have to address. But the urban development team, the credit team, has already reached this point that they are already fomenting climate adaptation projects to the cities that they have already a long relationship with by financing city projects. So BNDES has this capacity building approach while dealing with the public sector in these two agendas: the credit finance and the structuring project division. We are the main public bank that finances municipalities and states in Brazil. And we also have a net of regional development banks in Brazil that BNDES funds this regional development banks. So, and they can reach smaller cities. Could you pass the slides, please? Another one. So here are some projects that we have financed, climate projects. So in São Paulo, which is the biggest city in Brazil, it's a big metropolis, BNDES helped São Paulo to, we structured the concession of the city parks. So they, which includes revitalization of iconic spaces like the Ibirapuera Park. And we created, these parks are green spaces in a very polluted and heavy traffic city and a big city. So these parks are now being used by the population. They have services inside them. People, São Paulo is a very gray city, so these green spaces are very important to the microclimate of the city, as well as a mitigation as a GHG reduction emissions.
Yeah.
So,
Marta, sorry to interrupt you. Just in terms of timing, it would be good.
Yeah, let me advance. No, and also now I'm going to answer your second question, which is about the innovative financial instruments that BNDES has launched to finance the cities in Brazil, because the cities in Brazil, they have a very restrict fiscal space. So it's difficult for them to get credit. So we launched a blended finance instrument with one of the agendas was urban development with climate adaptation and climate mitigation focus. So blended finance is one of the innovative instruments that we are tackling climate finance with the cities. And the last slide, please, is about BNDES participation in the NUCA program. we are going to partnership with ABDE, which is the Association of Brazilian Development Banks. As I said, Brazil has this net of regional development banks, and they are going to be very important to reach the smaller cities or the medium cities that sometimes BNDES cannot reach. So tools, capacity building, feasibility studies, stakeholder engagement, which the NUCA program will provide, is going to be very important to BNDES and these regional banks to scale up the climate agenda in Brazilian cities. Thank you, and I'm sorry for the technical problems.
No problem. You're Brazilian, so you know how to improvise. So it was excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
So if I may turn to DBSA now, Mr. Mantad, again, in a way, the same question, which is essentially, describe a bit in DBSA, how is this urban climate, projects, how are they developed? And number two, in terms of finance instruments, are there certain highlights you'd like to make? Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. I come from the climate and environment finance side of the bank, which sits under our project preparation division. And I guess the reason why I'm mentioning the division I sit in is that we also have in the same stable a unit that basically assists municipalities from a planning point of view. So what that means is early planning that leads to development of IDPs, integrated development plans, that leads to basically a pipeline of infrastructure projects. That's really what the unit covers. So what we have seen as an important intervention is to really look at that planning stage to say, that's the right space to start thinking about climate issues. Actually, beyond that, just generally biodiversity stroke, the broader and nature-based interventions to be inculcated in the planning stage so that your resultant infrastructure plans already positions the projects, the infrastructure projects and programs to be able to access climate financing. In actual fact, we currently will be starting a program supported by the GEF with a number of cities in the country to look at building or putting together climate risk and vulnerability frameworks that would form the basis of the planning by our planning unit. So I believe that is an important intervention from our side, especially because we operate a lot, or a bigger part of our business tends to be in the municipal space. The other thing that I thought maybe is worth mentioning that we are currently working with a number of cities, including the city of Tshwane. So we're looking at an e-mobility program, basically looking at piloting electric buses, in municipalities, with the view that post that stage we can look at significant upscaling of the program. And in that regard, we try to look at the synergies between the various funding mechanisms, such as, typically working with your GEF to look at the enabling environment side. Then when you go on to early piloting, leading into implementation, you look at how you pull in the Green Climate Fund. And I think to date, in spite of the challenges that comes with it, we believe we are seeing some headway. And I wanted with that to just talk a bit about the financial, hopefully can call them innovations that we are looking at or have started deploying that we believe are beneficial to cities. The first one I wanted to talk to, even though we positioned it as more for private sector interventions, is a climate finance facility. And the idea was really to look at how we crowd in a significant private investment into mitigation and adaptation projects. And for cities, specifically where this program was concerned, was to see how we support private sector deployment of projects within cities. You know, as I've mentioned, for mitigation adaptation projects. And this is currently ongoing. I think I should talk about a bit of challenges that we've had, because there was earlier an intervention that talked to the challenges around local currency financing. This program that I'm talking to was co-financed with the GCF. And the first challenge that we had was that we obviously receiving dollars from the GCF. We struggled to deploy locally because nobody would take the currency risk. And we took, I think, just about 2 years or more trying to sort that out. And it's only now that we've been able to sort that out and are starting to implement. But quickly, while time allows me, I'll move on to the next instrument that we put in place, again with a partnership from the GCF. We put together an embedded generation investment program. And the idea was to support both private sector and public sector, and the public sector specifically the municipal space. We found that when we started to deploy this facility, it was quite easy to build a pipeline on the private sector side, but on the municipal side, we faced a few challenges. First of all, there was mention around capacity, just the capacity to be able to put together projects that could be funded was a challenge. But even more, we found that possible projects that were sitting within municipalities were still at a very early stage, even earlier than what our project preparation facilities could be able to support. That would be very much concept stage, not even at pre-feasibility. And that's where partnerships were quite key. We partnered with a UK Pact and started helping municipalities, you know, work on projects right up to pre-feasibility stage. When they get to pre-feasibility, then we could support them through our project preparation facility, transitioning them to the forbidden weight bankability, you know, so that they can, you know, start benefiting from our embedded generation program. But we believe, you know, that is actually going quite well. We're actually looking at expanding this program with UK Pact. And but this was the important thing. The elements of what we led through the UK Pact project, transitioning projects from the early stage to bankability, or even to the entrance to our project preparation facility, we found useful in a new program that has recently just been approved by the GCF also, which was, I guess, at that time at least the largest approved amount for an adaptation project, and that was for a water reuse project. The same kind of challenges became evident, that you are going to have to help municipalities, you know, start from that early stage to get to a point where we can be able to finance them through this program, so that we don't have facilities that are sitting but are not we are not able to tap into. So those are the three examples I would like to refer to. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for this very precise description of this, and also interesting because they address different types of issues and opportunities, right? So that's great. So now may I turn to you, Mr. Pradana Murthy from PTSMI. Then, do you remember the question still, or? Yes?
A gentle reminder.
No, just, no.
Thank you. I'll start with the explaining about the landscape of local governments in Indonesia. First and foremost is the political system of Indonesia is decentralized. Some of the power are being delegated to local governments. but some retained by central government, yeah, including most of the revenue collections retained by central government, and how local government can actually fundraise are heavily regulated by central government. Yeah. Although it can be open, yeah, from municipal financing to municipal bond, but the standard is quite high. That's set by central government. There are 548 local governments in Indonesia at different levels, provincial, and then city or regency, yeah. And the capacity of those regions varied a lot. Yeah, you're talking about Jakarta, in one end of spectrum, which is very rich and high capacity, including human resources, down to a newly formed regency in up mountain in Papua. Yeah, so very varied capacity that we're talking about. And for that reason, capacity building is almost need to be done from 101 types of capacity building. So it's like what is that and how to manage that, yeah, let alone the climate actions. So SMI first embarked in this municipal financing back in 2015. Before that, municipal financings are done centrally by Ministry of Finance. Right now, Ministry of Finance aspire that most of the municipal financings to be done by SMI, although some of the maybe big projects are still being done centrally to from say let's say for example Jakarta MRT was financed with a two-step loans modality from international FIs to central government and to local government. But the majority of municipal financing is expected by SMI. So out of the 7.6 billion worth of assets of ours, actually 2 billions are in the form of municipal financing assets. And we need to do more, and we are being instructed by our Minister of Finance to do more. Right now, our municipal clients is around 100, so it's a long way to go to reach the whole 548 municipal governments. So I think when we started, of course, we have collaborated with people who's more knowledgeable than us. So we collaborated with people like World Bank and also supported by AIIB as well as Swiss Contacts. They provided TAs and loans. So along with that is all capacity development is being built within SMI as well as capacity building to municipal governments. How to actually do safeguards, how to actually write feasibility studies, how to actually do environmental impact assessments, and how actually to connect local planning to national planning. Yeah, and as what the mayor from South Africa mentioned, that in Indonesia is also sometimes also gaps between national targets and local targets. Yeah. But again, we try to educate municipal governments to actually identify where they want to go with these activities, yeah, in terms of national targets contribution as well as local targets contribution. So I think that is our role and the challenge that we have today, and I'm pleased to have Nuka. Yeah, that is going to be an education not just for local government but also for us. Yeah, and I think next in our planning is again this needs to be more comprehensively done, and we are not happy just to provide project development facilities, TAs, capacity building, but we are going to take one step further, mirroring what's being done by MDBs. We are going to develop a subnational framework agreement between us and our partner municipalities. So that's going to be a comprehensive financing plan that we are going to do. That's going to align KPIs with local and national targets. Yeah. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's quite interesting, the last point there. But so thank you very much to you all. Martha, also, thank you. We have not forgotten you, even if you're only in 2 dimensions. Before turning to concluding statements, maybe I'll just go, because of the hour, very telegraphic on what at least I've heard, which is essentially the following. I think capacity building was mentioned across the board, interestingly, both to the municipalities, but also within the institutions. It was interesting from Marta to hear about the notion of intermediary to a certain extent, right? At least within Brazil, that you have the famous, I don't think it's a forbidden word yet, but blended finance was mentioned, although it sometimes is a bit overused. I think planning was also, mentioned, I think very much in terms of the support and knowing essentially what the money is going to be for. Then I also heard another one that we hear very often, enabling environment, right? So it's a very nice EE, but it's a very complicated one. We heard another one that we hear all the time about private sector, right? One that I think is absolutely crucial, but that we hear less, which is local currency, right? You've mentioned that. And I think that is, your institutions and those here, I think that that's a major role that they have. One that I heard a bit, I think particularly in your introduction, when you mention, I think is the organizational dimension, right? Climate, urban, country, each of your organization has its challenges and its opportunities. How you put this together is also something, that's very important, and how you will deploy, this activity. I think that's where, NUCA will also hopefully, be helpful in terms of structuring, your approach, both in terms of the capacity building, the planning activity, financing instruments, and essentially, build up of pipeline and delivery. So sorry, I've been too long with my telegraphic, or it's a very long telegram. So that gives me the opportunity, I should stand now to be official, to invite Mr. Edwin Surizag, I hope that I'm pronouncing your name correctly, President Director of PTSMI, for concluding remarks. Welcome and thank you. I think you can have the grandstand.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think you have summarized very thoroughly about the.
I have to show I've listened.
Yeah. I think from my side, I think first of all, I'm happy to witness the collective commitments that we built towards sustainable and climate resilient cities. Yeah, I think we highlight 2 important points during the discussion. First is the criticality of the cities and climate urban financing and climate urban projects. Yeah, that number one, and the second is the opportunity for the PDB, National Development Banks, to scale up urban financing. I think with regard to number one, I think the importance of cities, I think the panel number one, session number one has addressed especially AFD about the challenges of the cities, city government, technically capacity, and financially, financial autonomy in tackling especially the challenge of the climate risks. And I think National Development Bank can emerge as a key player in bridging the gap. Yeah, of course, Pak Pradana mentioned very clearly about our role, and not only providing finance to the local government, but also our pathway, yeah, to become a truly development banks. Lastly, yeah, I also would like to appreciate IDFC in taking initiative to support National Development Bank through NUCA programs. We hope that this program can best support the national development banks by strengthening the capacity, yeah, for the urban climate finance, and also help banks and the city jointly bring projects, bankable climate projects, with the support from German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. We hope that we can align the city's expectation and by deploying technical and financial support for urban climate project preparation and investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for showing energy, you know, in your last applause maybe of the day, you know, maybe tomorrow it starts again. But anyway, thank you very much to all. Thank you for your resilience, you know, not only in climate terms, but in physical terms. And good night to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Josue. I would like just
Thank
to say
you.
that
Good
please remain here because we have a small cocktail to celebrate our the completion of these projects. And please stay here for joining this cocktail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.